Hello everyone and welcome back to the Neverland Book Club. This past year has been a year of reflection, a year of holding on tight to things I should have been letting go of for far too long, of shedding what I thought I should do and figuring out what it is I want to do. Just that quote from Uncle Iroh that's been on a loop in my mind for months. I didn't reach my reading goals this year. I didn't reach my writing goals this year. I stopped doing a lot of the things I loved in pursuit of doing things I felt obligated towards, which of course we all have our obligations and responsibilities, but it was a bit more soul-eating than that. But all of that to say, I had a much smaller pool than usual to choose from this time around when writing this video. As you may know, these are my favorite videos to make each year, and it's felt like they're sometimes the only videos I've actually shown up to create consistently since starting this channel. So here we go, my top reads of 2025. Let's get into it. So I did post a mid-year wrap-up of all my favorite reads as of summer of 2025, so if you're interested in the first half of the year, go ahead and watch that video. But just as a rapid fire, let's review the titles that were listed in that video. First, we have Januaries by Olivia Blake, who also made the second part of this list, but we'll discuss that when we get there. Januaries was a collection of short stories drenched in magical realism with a woven theme of time and circumstance connecting each fever dream of a story. Then we had Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and still my favorite book from her so far after reading Problematic Summer Romance and Mate this year. Deep End took her usual interests in academia and spun them just a little left, having her characters being more than just one thing. They were athletes, academics, misunderstood in their kink, and just pretty fun to read. Then we ventured on into fantasy with Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, the third book in the Fourth Wing series, and just as non-stop action-packed as you'd imagine it to be. I really enjoyed learning more about dragon culture in this one. Just an above-average fun time here. Okay, we stuck with Rebecca Yarros with the next one, Variation. This was a contemporary romance set in the ballet world with nuance, drama, high stakes, and twists that felt just as exciting as being on the back of a fighting dragon. I'm gonna skip over a few of the short stories. If you want the full video discussion, it'll be linked below. But then we had Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and I can't not make this face when remembering this book. I cried so much. I love the way Abby writes about love, real life fairy tales that are set in the most mundane of places and tell the most heart-wrenching of stories. Her characters feel too real not to care about, and yeah, I love her so much. I took out the wrong one, hold on. All right, then there was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Emily Henry. Everything you'd expect from an Emily Henry novel. A tall, blonde writer main character and her misunderstood love interest, a more subtle take of the art of yearning, humor that feels natural and well-timed, all just written so well, leading up to the payoff that hits home in satisfaction. All right, and last on the previous list was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. A book I was intimidated to start for years, and with good reason, being an 8-book series. It was interesting having read all of SJM's other books before diving into where it all began, seeing the evolution of her writing style in reverse. There's a reason why this book was considered YA, which is probably why ACOTAR was also listed as YA, even though it is very much not, at least not in my opinion. Because she came from a YA background when finishing one series and entering the next, I think. That's all speculative. I haven't done any research on that, that's just what I think. And that, dear viewers, brings us to our first books on our list for today. Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire. These first 3 novels felt like its own series. I read these 2 back to back in June, and it was just so reminiscent of finding myself in Valaris. Her writing style is so immersive and engaging, and I know not everyone feels that way, but I do. I don't know what else to tell you. I do, and I'm grateful for that because I don't know how you can top the way I felt when first reading ACOTAR, but this feels like it's getting super close. Now, I haven't read any more of the series since June, but that's just because I want to be in the right headspace to continue and appreciate what I'm reading, so hopefully I'll be able to finish the entirety of the Throne of Glass series in 2026. Of course, I'm not going to get into too much detail of the stories and characters, but I do know I'm supposed to like Rowan, and I don't just yet. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but if it is, just skip like 10 seconds. He like punches Selena in the face. Like, what? And I'm supposed to like him? I don't know. I might just eat my words in less than a month if I pick up the next book by then, but we'll just have to wait and see. Otherwise, of course, I give these books an above 4.5 star rating. That's just a biased rating at this point, but I care not. Every one of these is just guaranteed 5, you know? Like, they have their own rating system within the SJM universe. The top being Mist and Fury. Oh, but then there was Silver Flame. Staying on the topic of biases here, next we have Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. See, this woman can do no wrong, in my mind, even when she very clearly does wrong sometimes. Like with this book, which was about nothing at all. And much like some of her other titles, Olivia Blake resists the traditional structure of plot in a way that feels entirely intentional. She is the embodiment of all prose and all vibes. Just to start, this was told from the perspective of God, who's eventually revealed in a way I enjoyed so much. And just know it probably pissed a lot of other people off. There was no sweeping quest or looming external threat unless you count the literal plagues of Egypt as threats. The stakes are instead psychological, deeply self-reflective, and rooted in each character's internal grapplings with their own limitations, misbeliefs, desires, and self-deceptions. Blake continues to choose introspection in the place of adventure, while using a blend of magical realism with overt magic to both hinder and help each character's individual journey through themselves. Blake also has a thing for telling stories through the dynamics of siblings. Here we have 3 siblings all gathered for the reading of their late father's will after his death. That's the plot, for lack of a better word. And the magic here is mostly in the siblings, the writing, the drive of each character's willingness and desperation to overcome themselves. A narrative pressure point, forcing each sibling towards growth, clarity, or collapse. Now, I understand this type of storytelling is not for everyone. A lot of people deem Blake's writing as overly pretentious, while also negligent towards the classic art of format, pace, or timelessness. She uses phrases you'd only ever hear being used in the past, 5 years or so, dating her novels or dooming them to be wildly misunderstood in the future. I'm surprised she didn't reference 6-7 or something in this one. It would have driven me insane. Though I will be looking out for it in the next. But back to the novel. Reading each character's breakdown of their own ego, watching their layers be stripped down to their most basic desires to just be denied, witnessing the recurring death of what they thought they should be, it felt so cathartic. It made me look in the mirror and linger just a bit longer, reaching toward an understanding of myself, my intentions, and my truest desires, if they align, if they serve, if they make sense. This book was about understanding the cost of power, the power of identity, and the ability to finally look at oneself without flinching. 5 stars. Okay, that was intense. I sometimes feel like I should bring back individual videos dedicated to specific titles, but anyway. Next we have The Good Girl Effect by the lovely Sarah Kate. You know, sometimes we just want to get away from our lives. We want to escape our small towns and find love in a big city. And sometimes, while working in a used bookshop, we find a love letter tucked away in an old book and make it our life's mission to return the letter to its author. What an interesting premise for a novel, huh? This novel was the first installment of the Salacious Legacy series, a next-generation spin-off of the Salacious Players Club series, which, as you may remember, I ate up when I first got hold of them, and still to this day won't stop singing praises for praise. With The Good Girl Effect, Sarah Kate continues to deliver her signature realistic and layered characters who are dealing with both inner struggles and real-world challenges. Camille, our FMC, is curious, compassionate, and eager. I was fortunate enough to read the arc before release, and I'm so grateful to be part of Sarah Kate's arc team. I'm currently reading Promise Me. Just stay tuned. Sometimes you ask the universe for what you want, and it delivers. 5 stars. Okay, so this next one I'm not going to go into too much detail about because I'm sure everyone watching this or not watching this knows this next title. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Why did I read this title when I've known the story for ages? Because sometimes you want to be swept away by the original text. And this did just that. When Catabasis came out, and I regret to say I have not read it yet, but I have every intention to, and it is sitting on my shelf waiting patiently, I knew I wanted to go into it with full knowledge of the source material. And so I dusted off my old, beautifully illustrated copy. The Divine Comedy is one of those works that feels impossibly ancient and yet startlingly modern all at once. This was written in the early 14th century, a poem that follows Dante himself as he journeys through hell, purgatory, and heaven, guided by Virgil and then by Beatrice, the woman he's doing all of this for. On the surface, this poem is an epic allegorical pilgrimage of the soul, a religious reflection of what might await us with leveled examples of our potential demise. Beneath that, I found it deeply human, exploring themes of guilt, mortality, and the desire to be worthy of forgiveness and grace. What I found most interesting was its relevance to modern-day themes, anxieties, and questions of justice and punishment us humans have grappled with over literal centuries and still haven't found tangible answers for. Dante's hell isn't simply a place of torment, it's a moral map, shaped by choices, desires, and inevitable failure. It's almost too obvious to point out the influence this has had on modern storytelling. Countless stories, religious, literary, fantastical, have all been shaped in some way or another by this depiction of the afterlife. The concept of descending through the circles of hell has become a narrative archetype used in countless films, shows, novels, music, what have you. One of my favorites being the 1998 film with Robin Williams titled What Dreams May Come. I've thought about doing like an entire video essay on the parallels between these two stories and how much that movie just messed me up as a kid, but we'll maybe get to that later, I don't know. Essentially, the Divine Comedy is disarmingly simple. A man willing to endure damnation, transformation, and transcendence for a woman who asks him to find his way back to himself, which nowadays is just too much to ask for. 5 stars, duh. All right, so speaking of the afterlife, next we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. Another author I just add to cart without asking any questions. This book was yet another one that reminded me why I love reading books. Like, yes, of course I don't need reminding, that's just silly, but is it? It's as though we get so caught up sometimes in the worlds we escape into, we can sometimes forget this is a craft. This is an art. Not everyone is good at this, and even those who are successful at selling doesn't always mean they're successful at storytelling. Love her or hate her, V.E. Schwab is good at her craft. That's a non-negotiable. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil was a love letter to Gothic vampire fiction, which is by far one of my favorite subgenres ever created. This felt like sinking my teeth into ancient flesh, intimate and cerebral, playing with ancient themes and modern desires. This is the kind of story that doesn't rush to explain itself, but instead asks you to stare into the shadows and make out shapes for yourself. Figure it out by feel and instinct rather than letting it sit in shining light. It reminded me of old vampire tales, an Interview with the Vampire-esque story that goes back generations of vampires all giving rise to one another in pursuit of killing the hand that created you so you may finally be reborn anew. And yes, this delivers on all that queer angst that the Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise version of Interview with the Vampire denied, but also so did the AMC Interview with the Vampire remake, so I absolutely loved that. I binged it in like 2 days. Both that and this, 5 stars. All right, now it's time for the last book on this list. This was in my reading order, so this last title was my most recent and memorable read of the year. Alchemised by Senlin Yu. So this was the kind of book that came carrying its own shadow, its own reputation, as well as the conversations that followed it from AO3 into the traditional publishing space. Knowing absolutely nothing about the original text, Manacled, other than the fact that it was a dark Draco and Hermione fanfiction, I did come into it with certain expectations. After reading, I see exactly why this specific title crossed the bridge from online sensation to best-selling novel. This was dark, brutal, testing boundaries on what traditional publishing houses were probably comfortable with publishing. There was a level of intensity that came with the story that made you so viscerally uncomfortable yet you kept coming back for more. The book, from my understanding, had some controversy, particularly around its origins and dark themes of sexual assault. Definitely read the trigger warnings before jumping into this one, but what made it on the list was the experience for me. The amount of times I felt present. The pacing is relentless, the atmosphere suffocating, the emotional states you don't quite understand yet until you do. The best word I can use to describe this is raw. In its emotion, in its honesty, in its unapologetic discomfort. I've never really read anything on AO3. I was never in the fanfic spaces growing up, so I won't pretend to understand the culture or expectations of AO3 writing, but if it's anything like Senlin Yu's, I know I've been missing out. 5 stars. Whew, okay. That list wasn't particularly long, yet it was still a lot, yeah? Like I said, I didn't get to read as many books as I normally do this year, but somehow I'll learn to live with myself and try to do better next year. Comment below what your best reads of 2025 were. I love chatting with y'all in the comments. I have a number of books on my TBR I cannot wait to read and discuss with you guys, and I will be posting more in 2026, so if you liked this video, please give it a like, share with your other reader friends, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not, it helps a lot. I've said it before, but my goal for this year is 5,000 subscribers. That may not seem like much, but it would mean a lot to me, so there you go. And don't forget, if you'd like to check out any of the books discussed today, you can find the affiliate links in the description below. I get a little kickback from Amazon with those links, so thank you in advance if you do use them. Also, just a reminder, because now I have to market the book that I wrote a book. It's called Dancing with Strangers. It is a contemporary romance. It is very spicy. It's set in Spain. You should read it. Linked down below. I don't know, it has pretty good reviews on Goodreads. I mean, it's just an observation. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Stay lost, keep reading. Goodbye. Ooh. The Divine Comedy is one of those works that feels impossibly ancient and yet startlingly, oh my god, I can't speak.